Carrie, do you also want to welcome Laurent?
Oh, yes, there she is.
Yeah, I think she's on here.
Yes, I see her on there. Hey, Lawrence, how are you?
Hey, I won't show my face, but hey, I'm good. Thank you. How are you, Carrie?
Doing good. Waiting for this COVID to be over so we can get back to some football.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, I see we got about 23 online now, Frank.
Yeah, I think that's what the number is. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, Carrie, anytime you're ready.
Yeah, might as well. Okay, welcome back everybody again for session number 2 of the Level 1 certification program. We got a lot of the administrative stuff done last Saturday. We'll get more in depth into the scrimmage, the duties and positioning in this session. So the session 2 agenda is basic scrimmage requirements, duties and positioning. And we'll also we'll get into some definitions of things like clothesline play area, you know, what constitutes a legal scrimmage and all that sort of stuff. Next one, Frank.
Yeah.
So basic scrimmage definitions. The line of scrimmage is from the front point of the football, sideline to sideline. And what's referred to as the neutral zone is 1 yard ahead of the line of scrimmage or the nose of the football, sideline to sideline. All defensive players must give a yard prior to the snap of the ball. Frank talked last week about being consistent with your standard. So, you know, if your yard is 34 inches at the first scrimmage play, then your standard should be the same on the last play of the game. So again, just stealing Frank's comments from last session, be consistent, and this is your 1 yard neutral zone. Okay. The line of the attacking team, those players within 1 yard of the line of scrimmage are called line players. The backfield are those players that are clearly back of the line, not within the 1 yard area. The QB for most scrimmage plays is considered in the backfield. So here you've got you know, your block of 5, your and 2 ends. So you've got 7 on the line here. Now, one of the questions that do come up, can you have more than 7 on the line? Yeah, in theory, you could have 11 players on that line of scrimmage. There's no restriction saying you can't have more, but there is restriction saying that you can't have less than 7 men on the line. Okay. When team A is on offense, again, it's showing here your 7 guys up. You got 5 in the backfield. You have slot backs. They can run up to the line, but they are back on this particular slide, and you'll see a little bit later they'll talk about definitions of slot backs hitting the line as well. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, you got your 5 ineligible players in a continuous unbroken line that are within 1 yard. So between 50 and 79 are your ineligible players. They can be spread out, but they have to be in a continuous line. You can't have, say, like a number 2 between the center and the guard. That's not a legal formation. So the 5 ineligible number players must be in a continuous unbroken line within 1 yard of the line of scrimmage. The line players must pause 1 second before the ball is snapped. One of the rule changes last year that came in was allowing linemen to point at the defensive players, you know, for their blocking assignments. But even if they're pointing in a 2-point stance, we'll talk about stances a couple slides later, they've got to be set for 1 second prior to the ball being snapped. And we'll talk about wide receivers in a minute. We talked about ineligible numbers. Those are the players wearing number 50 to 79 that are ineligible receivers, regardless of the position on the line or backfield, unless they have reported in to the referee. A player who is at the end of a player who at the snap is of the ball is occupying those end positions cannot be moving forward. They can move laterally away from the line, parallel to the line, or towards the line, but they can't be moving forward. And this is what this slide is telling us here. So you see the end is moving outside, and then the end on the right is moving towards the block of 5. That's legal, but they can't be moving forward. Okay. Backfield players, 1 to 49, 80 to 99, who are in motion, maybe within 1 yard of the line of scrimmage when the ball is snapped. They cannot stop. Otherwise, that's going to affect their eligibility for being eligible as a pass receiver. They must be moving forward at the snap. They are allowed to be moving forward at the snap, pardon me. Okay. So there's your different stance. The player in red is in a 3-point stance. He cannot change his stance once he gets to that point. You see the arrow to the green player on the just to the left of number 66 green there. He's in a 2-point stance. He can go to a 3-point stance, but he still must be motionless 1 second prior to the snap of the ball.
Hi, Carrie.
Yeah.
I'm really new to the sport of tackle, so I just wanted to catch you on the slide previous to this.
Sure.
The running back can move forward and must continue moving forward, or at least attempting to move forward at the snap. Is that the case?
Okay, so no, maybe I didn't probably say that as good as it should be. So that slot's heading towards the line. He can break off, he can stop prior to getting to the line, but if he's continuing motion, the ball must be snapped before he crosses the line, or otherwise he's offside. He can come up to the line, but if he stops, he's got to be 1 yard back of the line. Otherwise, he makes himself ineligible by position going downfield.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
If he's in that 1 yard, within that 1 yard of the line of scrimmage, and is in motion as the ball snapped, that player still is eligible. But if he comes and stops in that zone, then he becomes ineligible because he's cut himself off.
Thank
that
you.
helps any. Okay.
Yeah.
No, good question. Good question.
Okay.
Okay, and I think we're good. I think we got through everything.
Got that? Okay.
With the different stances. Okay, so the center must face the direction of the opponent's goal line. He cannot lift the ball to set it. He can rotate it, or he can place his hand underneath it, but he can't pick it up. He can't make a movement to draw the defense offside. And he must, when he snaps the ball, it must be snapped between the legs in one continuous motion from toe to heel, and the ball must leave the center's hands. There are some coaches out there that try to play games and do trick plays, but that's the requirement of the center. Other thing is, once this player, the center, places one or both hands on the ball, that player must snap the ball. And it's a penalty if he changes with another player. Now, the center can take his hands off the ball, rise to talk to the quarterback, providing no misleading tactics are to draw Team B offside. And for the new officials, you'll see this in your Pee Wee divisions often. You're going to see the center stand up and go to the quarterback. Are we snapping on 1 or 2? So you'll see that from time to time. If it's done in a manner to not draw the defense offside, then there's no foul. It's just a communication thing, right?
Yeah, there was just a question whether that about center sneak not illegal, right? and that's correct. You can't have the center can never ever carry the ball other than picking it up after a fumble.
Yeah. On all kick plays from scrimmage, punts, field goal attempts, converts, it's illegal to contact the center on or within 1 yard on either side of the line of scrimmage. And that's just basically player safety. It used to be years ago, the center used to be so vulnerable on those types of plays, and they wanted to protect the center. If you have guys running the gap, and what I mean by the gap between, if you look at that gap between number 68 and number 65, and he brushes the shoulder of the center, that's not a foul. What they're talking about on the center is nobody can smack that center within a yard on either side of the line of scrimmage, and that's just to protect the center on kicking plays.
Yeah. Most cases, the centers usually have their head down, looking back towards where they're snapping the ball, and that puts them in a very vulnerable position. So that's why we give that extra protection to that center.
Yeah. The clothesline play area. That is defined as 2 yards on either side of the line of scrimmage, so 2 yards on either side of the ball, tight end to tight end, and that was a rule change last year, I believe, or the year before.
This year, actually.
This year, okay. This year, tight end to tight end, and it used to be from tackle to tackle. Now it's tight end to tight end, or if you look at the rule book, I believe it also says where the tight end would normally line up. So the clothesline play area doesn't expand if the tight ends line up as wide receiver. That does not expand to that area. It's where a tight end would normally line up if they're not there. But this slide here shows you with the tight ends in. So that's your clothesline play area. 2 yards in front, 2 yards back, tight end to tight end. Okay. A player initiating a block below the waist in this area must be positioned in this area at the snap of the ball for the block to be legal. So those players that are in that block, in that clothesline play area, are allowed to block below the waist.
Kerry, this one is the expanded. This is the block below the waist area, which extends deeper into the offensive backfield.
Yes. Now, are the two guys at the back of that blue line going to be considered legal for this particular play?
No, because usually what happens is, and it's just a rule of thumb that we use like 7 yards back of the line of scrimmage as sort of a depth on a normal scrimmage play, and the depth of the punter, which is somewhere 12 to 15 yards on a punt play. So,
yes.
So in this case, as you see, if you've got a couple of running backs or players in the backfield that are really deep, they would be outside of this area and would not be allowed to block below the waist.
Yeah, no, you're correct. I misread that. I was still thinking clothesline play area, not block below the waist area. No, you're right. Thanks for catching that one.
But those other two within the blue line to the line of scrimmage would be eligible to block below the waist?
Correct.
Yes.
Thank you.
So the basic scrimmage requirements, line of scrimmage, we have the eligible, you got to have your eligible ends. You have your 5 interior line players. Your numbering 1 to 49, 80 to 99 are eligible. 50 to 79 are ineligible. And for whatever reason, our rule book explicitly says 0 and 00 do not count as a proper number. And you will see teams show up with 0s and 00s, and they got to change those for amateur football.
Okay, before we carry on, we'll just take a quick stop and allow people to ask any questions. The material in this section, session, is maybe not as long as it was in the first session, so we've got a little bit more time to actually ask some questions. We do have one question here right now, and it says running back cannot block below the belt, chop in amateur ball, right? That's not necessarily the case. If they actually line up in the inside this area, the 2 yards on side the team B side and 7 yards deep, if they line up in that area, they can actually block below the waist. And so that's legal now. That was a change, I think 2 years ago now, that they allowed people to actually block below the waist, because what was happening was you had those running backs there, and it was very confusing and very difficult to tell whether or not they were where they were coming from and whether they were inside the close line play area or not. Now, with the zone a little bit larger, you can actually see a little bit better. So if anybody's got a question, just unmute yourself and then just ask the question.
Hey, just to follow up with that, thanks a lot. So was that a 2020 rule change then, that the backs could actually engage below the waist?
I'd have to go back and check again whether it was in 2019 or 2020.
Okay, because for years, and I thought 2019 we were still having that called.
You may be right.
Yeah.
With COVID, I forget which year the changes actually. No, it had to be in 2019 because it was actually enforced, because we didn't have any football last year. It was 2019 that it came into effect.
Okay, good to know, because we were always teaching our backs not to block below the waist, because we were getting that called. So good to know. Thank you.
Yeah, up until 2019, you're right. They couldn't block below the waist, but now they can, as long as the block occurs in that zone.
Just as an example of that, if you guys, Frank and I were experimenting before everybody joined us about a video clip. If you go to the top of the chat, I've actually attached a video clip of a block below the waist that's legal, and that was actually from 2019. So I don't know if the rest of you guys are able to access that, or whether it was just between me and Frank, but go to the top of the chat. If there's an attachment with a video clip, that might show what we're talking about. And hopefully I haven't confused everyone.
So sorry, just a quick question about that blocking below the waist area. If they line up outside of that 7 yard space and then motion in before the ball is snapped, are they then eligible to block below the waist or not?
If they line up outside of this box area, they have to come in and come to a complete stop before the snap. Then they're eligible to block below the waist.
Thank you.
If you can look at that clip that Kerry gave, it's the slot back that goes from the left to right across the line of scrimmage. That is the block that you would be looking at. Any other questions? Does anybody have any questions from leftover, maybe from after thinking about it from last week or anything? Where we can maybe deal with some of those if there's anything.
Maybe I do have one about the blocking below the waist. You can hear me, right?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Just in regards to, so we're drawing those lines where the tight end lines up. Now, are we saying that anywhere outside of the tight end's outside shoulder is not a legal chop? So let's say a rush end lines up well outside the tight end. The tight end kind of opens himself and chops that tight end technically outside where he lined up. Would that be kind of an area of concern, or is that still legal?
No, if you line up with a tight end and you've got a defensive linebacker or lineman lined up outside the tight end, and they come straight forward, and the tight end then cuts to the outside, which would be outside of the box, that is illegal. They have to either cut straight forward or inside. Okay.
So like a wide rush, like one of those rush ends lined up wide, we're not going to let the tight end chop him. Okay.
That's right, on the outside.
Interesting. Okay, thank you.
Okay. So it goes back to like the Chad had said earlier, where they were teaching their tackles not to block cut, or the running backs to cut. Well, back in prior to this rule change, the tackles were the cutoff point, and if they were to cut outside, that was illegal. Well, now it's now been widened out to include where the tight end position would be. So the tackle can if the rush end defensively lines up on the outside shoulder of the tackle, and the tackle chops outside or cuts outside, then that's still legal, because that would be in the area where the tight end would normally have lined up.
Okay, now just sorry, kind of to further add to that, if a rush end lines up outside of that area as a rush end and then rushes at a diagonal angle inwards towards the lineman, is he then safe to be chopped by the lineman?
Yes, if that rush end lines up outside the box, outside those lines, and comes back in, and the block occurs inside that box, that is legal then. Okay, now let's move on and start the next section if there's no other questions, and we'll start talking a little bit about some duties and positioning. Some of the things that we'll talk about are the signals that you need prior to the start of each play, and each play has a little bit different signals. That you need to have a ready signal on a kickoff play. You need to signal with your partner who is the held and free official, and that helps determine who needs to go leave the line of scrimmage after the snap and go downfield to watch for pass and help with pass coverages. And also prior to the snap of every scrimmage play, you need to make sure you put up your gates. And we talked a little bit about that last week, but we'll talk a little more about it this week. We're going to talk a little bit about your positioning at the start of the play, what you should do with wideouts and checking with them. Signals during the play and during the game. The signals that you'll be using will be your time in signal, basically only on kickoffs. Timeout signal can happen by any official at any time. Screen pass signal and lateral pass signal. We'll also talk a little bit about marking the spot, primary spots, secondary spots, who's responsible and how to do it. And then we're also going to talk about ball retrieval. At most of the minor football and even high school games that we have or that we'll be working, you don't have ball people to retrieve the ball. So it's important that we know how to get the ball back into play as soon as we can, so that we don't waste much time for the players. And then also a little bit about using your whistle. Okay, for your first signal is your ready signal for a kickoff, because your kickoff is the first play of the game. And you want to count your team, and as soon as you know you've got 12 players on your side or on your team, you're going to then signal with your arm vertically up in the air to let the referee know that your team is ready and that you're also ready for play. The kickoff is the one and only play where we will actually not start the play until we know we've got 12 players on the field. So if you've got 13, you're going to want to make sure the coach that has the 13 that they get somebody off, and if they've got only 11 or 10 people, then you want to make sure the coach gets the 12th person on the field. After you put your arm up, then the referee will look at you and point, and you can then bring your arm down, and that signals that we're ready for play. Okay, duties between plays. The line of scrimmage, you want to signal hold and free. And you'll, when the referee whistles the play clock to start, you'll either look at your umpire or back umpire, depending on whether you're working a 4 official crew or a 5 official crew. and for direction as to who is the hold and who is the free. The hold official is the wide side official. So, I mean, if the ball is positioned on the far hash mark from your position, then that means you will be the wide side official and you'll be the hold official. The free official is the opposite then, would be on the short side of the field. And you will signal by, the free official will signal by pointing to the ground in front of them, and the wide official will signal downfield into the defensive secondary. Here we have in this case, the downs judge signaling downfield. That means that they are the free official. Okay, and here we have the hold official, and they're pointing down to the ground right in front of them.
Just a quick question. Sorry.
Okay, sure, yeah.
It seems very
what's the
ticky-tacky, but I just want to clarify. Last year when we were doing it, the free official was pointing downfield, and the held official was pointing in the backfield. So, sorry, the technical signal is the held official is pointing at the ground, or pointing, looks like he's pointing straight ahead.
Yeah, he'll be pointing straight ahead down towards the line of scrimmage, meaning that he's staying right there. That's the prescribed and recommended signal. I guess in your local association, if they have something slightly different, then that's, I guess, the decision that they've made. But the official signal that should be taught and used is pointing towards the line of scrimmage.
Excellent, thank you.
Okay. Yep.
Speaking also from EOFA, it was the same here as well. Free is downfield. Held was towards the backfield as well.
Okay. This is part of the interesting situation that we have across the country and in various different locations. Everybody has a little bit of some different idiosyncrasies. Neither are wrong. Okay, I'll tell you that. Neither are wrong, but the recommended is what we're teaching you here. If your local association is recommending that the hold official point in the offensive backfield, and that works for you, okay, fine. I can live with that, but it's not what is being recommended. Okay.
The snap in the center of the field, is it just communicating with each other who's going to take what if there's no wide side or narrow side of the field?
So the ball is centered basically in the center of the field. And that's why you look to either your back umpire / field judge or the umpire to get some indication as to who should be hold and who should be free. You still need to have a hold and free, even though the ball's in the middle of the field, just to have that official go downfield and do some pass coverage in the case of pass plays. We'll get into that more when we get into some of the mechanics in the next couple of sessions, but right now I think we'll just stick with the knowledge that you need to have a hold and a free official.
Frank, one of the indicators when I started as a headlinesman was if you're not getting the communication in that, if you look at your formation, if you're like a 4-and-1 or whatever, so you've got, even if it's in the center of the field, sometimes they'll stack one side, and that might be a clue if you have to make a decision to communicate.
Yeah. Usually what we recommend is the the down judge, sorry. Sometimes I go old school, but the downs judge should make the call one way or the other. If nobody's sort of sure what to do, they're in charge, so they should make the call. And there's no right or wrong when the ball's in the middle of the field, whether if it's 2 yards one side of the middle or 2 yards of the other side, and you select the wrong thing. There's nothing wrong with that. This is not a lot of the stuff that we do as officials is not a a science. It's an art. And so if the key factor is that we have that second official moving downfield to help out on pass coverages. Okay. One of the things that we talked about a little bit last week, and I know this is something that Carrie's big on, is the officials being in control of the substitutes. And when the referee blows his whistle to start the 20 or signals the 20-second clock in, that's when and the offense breaks the huddle with 2 or more players, then you want to put your gates up. That's signaling to the teams that no more players can come on the field. Okay, a player can still leave, but nobody can come on. It also then, and when you do this, you should be looking down both arms. Okay, even though if you have teams on opposite sides of the field and you're at one end of the field and you know there's no players to your left, you still should look to your left as well, because there may be somebody that came down the sidelines and came in behind you. So you need to have a look down both arms. And if you got both benches on one side and you're on the official on the other side, you for sure should still look down your arms to see that no spectators or any other situations, or possibly a rabbit or something may have come on the field. You want to make sure that things are under control, and that's why we talk about this being officials controlling the substitutes and sidelines. Duties between plays. Okay, here you can see the official putting his gates up, and you do this when 2 or more players leave the offensive huddle and the play has been blown in, and you want to check to make sure that there's no more substitutes coming in. Okay. Here you can see both officials looking with their gates up to make sure that there's nobody coming on. Okay, here you have the positioning on the field. Okay, you position yourself on the field to use the neutral zone, and what we recommend is that you put your one leg on the line of scrimmage and then straddle it, as you can see in the bottom picture, with the official with his legs reasonably wide apart, and that'll give you a sense of where that 1 yard zone is, so that you can tell whether the defense is lined up offside or not. The responsibilities that you have on the sidelines is making sure that you have an eligible receiver at the end of the line, and obviously ensuring that both teams are lined up onside, and that your offensive line players don't move early. Okay, the next thing we'll talk about is working with the wide receivers, checking as they come out. A lot of teams don't run with tight ends anymore. They run with their wideouts as being on the line of scrimmage as the end of the line. And so you actually have what would be classified as split end or a wideout. And so what you do, we've actually done a pretty good job communicating with coaches to ensure that they have their wideouts come out and check with the sideline official to see whether they're on the line of scrimmage or off the line of scrimmage. And I think that's what you want to do, is if they come out and they're pointing to you, that's usually an indication that they're telling you, I'm on the line. And then you can either tell them you're on or you're off. Okay. If they are off and excuse me, they should be on, you might want to just verbalize and say, move up a half a yard or move up a yard type of thing. Or if they're too far ahead, say move back a yard, back a step. Okay. This is all good verbal communication and also good preventative officiating. We don't need to have any more penalties than we need, and a procedural penalty like that we can avoid by having good communications with the players.
A helpful hint on those two, Frank, is when that wide receiver comes up, sometimes these guys get really close, then they stop, and then they end up leaning into your area. When I'm working line of scrimmage, when they're coming up and they're looking to me, I'll try and get them to stop maybe a half yard short so that when they do lean, they're actually at the right spot. And don't get technical on the 1 yard on these wide receivers. If they're a yard and a little bit or a yard and a half, they're not deceiving anyone. Don't give them a cheap flag. You know, they wanted to be on the line. They're pretty close. There's no other inside guy that's could create any doubt. Don't get too technical on these ones.
Yeah. Plus, working minor football, let's say you're doing an Adam or a Pee Wee game, the first level of football players, lots of times they use the wideouts as the young guy on the team that really doesn't know what he's doing, and quite often will be lost when they come out there. So you have to sort of coach them up a little bit. So be lenient and help. As you move up in the levels of football, they should know better, and you can be a little stricter on it. But as you're starting out with some minor football, give them a benefit of the doubt and help them out a little bit.
Okay. When you were talking about leaning in, can you just kind of touch a little bit more on what you mean by leaning in?
Okay, so the wide receiver comes up. Let's say it's a 35-yard line is your stripe. He comes up, his toes are just short of the 35, and then he just leans, and his shoulder and head is starting to lean in. I'll try, if I know the line of scrimmage is a 35, I'll try and even get him to take a step back to maybe 34 and a half, 34 and 3/4, so that when he does lean, that head and shoulder isn't in there. Because again, he's not gaining an advantage. It's a cheap fall, but if you have the opposition coach behind your back, he'll be going, oh, look, he's offside. He's offside. So again, it's just trying to not penalize the technical stuff that has no impact on the play. Fans and parents want to see touchdowns and great plays. They don't want to see us throw 30 technical flags for ticky-tacky stuff. And so, like Frank talked about, especially in the younger levels, let's try and coach them because they're trying to get their 10 plays in and they're being stuck to go out there as a wide receiver. Let's not technical to death.
Like, as me being a very new official, like I officiated my first season last year, got a grand total of like 7 games. Basically officiating strictly like Pee Wee, Adam, and Bantam. I was playing strictly pretty much as down judge. So I was officiating strictly the line of scrimmage. When I was having my receivers check in on me, I was going based off their feet, not whether or not they were leaning in. Is that wrong?
Yeah,
It's not necessarily wrong, but what happens is that wide receiver, maybe at the younger levels is not a big deal because you're taller and you can see sort of over and around the wide receiver, but you need to be able to see down the line of scrimmage to see the rest of the offensive line players and see the center snapping the ball so that you can tell whether there's any offsides or procedure calls to be made. And if that wide receiver comes out and leans in, they can be blocking your vision. So
exactly.
It's better to
I
have
didn't
them.
figure that as being a problem. I was just going just strictly off, is their feet within that 1 yard or not? If it is, I let them go.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that. Okay. But like I say, if they end up leaning in and you can't see the ball being snapped and you can't see, let's say, the guard and tackle on your side of the field, that becomes a problem. Okay. And so that's why it's probably good to get into a habit to have the wide receiver's feet a half a yard back. And that way, if they lean in, they're not obscuring your vision.
Plus, from a consistent point of view, we're penalizing the defense for leaning in, and now we're going to give the offense an extra latitude. And that's why I would rather have him back so that when he does lean, he's not into our area for the reasons Frank is, and from a consistency reason. We're penalizing the defense for leaning in. You're going to have a coach all over your backside going, well, wait a minute, our defense gets flagged for that. Why aren't you flagging the offensive guys? So, yeah, I would get them back, and it'll save you.
So even at that junior level, it's that most forward part of their body, whether it be their head, their shoulder, their foot, if they're having a back stance. It's whatever is closest to the line of scrimmage needs to be on that line of scrimmage or behind.
Correct.
Yep.
Correct. I mean, it's the same. It's the same with your guard and tackle. If they come out and line up with their head and or shoulders ahead of the ball into the neutral zone, that's an infraction as well. So it's no different with a wide receiver in that regard.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, now talking about signals of the sideline officials. You'd possibly be signaling time in on kickoffs if the ball comes down into a zone where you are, okay, into your zone. Don't be looking across the field and waving time in and what do we classify as ball hawking, okay? Everybody has their own responsibilities on each play, and if the ball's on the far side of the field, waving time in is not your responsibility, okay? And to wave time in, you want to, it's a full arm circle to simulate a clock, okay? Timeout signal is your hands crisscrossed over your head, okay? And you'll do this when the ball is carried out of bounds or after every play in the last 3 minutes of the first half and the second half. As sideline officials, you're the one that's going to make the call on screen passes, okay? And to indicate a screen pass is just putting your arm extended vertically up in the air, okay? And the reason you do that is a screen pass is a forward pass caught behind the line of scrimmage, okay? And on those kinds of plays, it's allowed for either line people or receivers to be downfield blocking before for the ball carrier. And so the deeper officials or even your umpire don't know where the ball was caught. As a line of scrimmage guy or person, you actually are the one that's going to see the where the ball is caught, and therefore you signal that it's a screen pass, and lets everybody else downfield know that blocking is loud and they don't throw a flag. Okay, the other type of pass caught behind the line of scrimmage would be a lateral pass, and you will then have your arm extended horizontally into the offensive backfield. This tells people that the ball is live and that it's still in play. It wouldn't be waved off as an incomplete pass, and allows other officials on the field know that it's a lateral and it's a live ball. Okay, a lateral ball is one that is thrown, handed, knocked, batted. The word kicked has now been taken out of the rule or fumbled by a player parallel to or in the direction of their own dead ball line. So it's basically a pass that goes backwards, whether it's thrown overhand, underhand, tossed, whatever. Okay, signals within the last 3 minutes of a half. Okay, timeout. It's very important. Okay, last 3 minutes in the Canadian game are huge to both teams, and we can have 5, 6 different changes of possession in that time frame, as opposed to our counterparts south of the border. So you want to, after the play is dead and the ball goes dead in your zone, again, you should be waving timeout. If the ball goes dead in some other official zone, you should be watching other tactics and not worrying about waving timeout. When the ball goes ball is inbounds or out of bounds. Timing rules in the last 3 minutes are affected on how the clock will start on the next play. And it determines what's going to happen. signal to help the crew and coaches know if the ball is inbounds at the end of the play or out of bounds. And you'll signal with your hands pointing forward into the field of play. That'll tell people that it's inbounds, and it'll tell the referee that when the ball is ready for play, he's going to start both the game clock and the 20-second clock. If the ball goes out of bounds, you're going to signal with your arms over your shoulders pointing out, and that'll then indicate again to the referee that the ball went out of bounds, and he'll hold the play clock, but we'll start the 20-second clock. Okay.
Sorry, just sorry to interrupt again. Just clarification. On the sideline there, we are saying that the ball is inbounds or out of bounds. That's only in the last 3 minutes, or should we be signaling that throughout the game? If the ball gets carried to the sideline, goes out of bounds, should we be making those signals still if there's 12 minutes on the clock?
It should only be in the last 3 minutes, because during the rest of the game, even though if the ball's gone out of bounds, okay, the ball carrier's carried the ball out of bounds, you're going to stop the clock, right? Doesn't matter if it's at 9:53 of the first quarter. You're going to stop the clock because the ball went out of bounds, okay? Now, possibly in some of your minor leagues, this may be a house rule. They may keep the clock running and only have stop time in the last 3 minutes. But in most cases, at high school and up, you're going to stop the clock when the ball goes out of bounds. You don't need to signal that it went out of bounds afterwards, because the referee is going to start both the 20-second clock and the game clock at the time that the ball is set and ready for the next play.
Thank you.
That help?
Yes, it did.
Okay, good. Then moving on to making a spot. There's a couple of situations. On most plays, we're going to have two officials, or we hope to have two officials sort of having their eyes on where the ball is in the zone, because everybody's zone sort of overlaps a little bit. But one official is going to be primary in that zone, and then there's also going to be a secondary. So the primary zone or primary spot is a ball that goes dead in your zone. You place your 1 foot forward with the toe at the forward point of the ball and pointing towards the goal that the offensive team is going in, or the ball carrier is going in. Ball that goes dead between the hash marks, you want to come in and take your spots a little bit closer. It's maybe not as big an issue on first and second down, but it certainly is on third down, or if it's on first and second down and you know it's going to be close to a possible measurement for a first down. So you'll want to come in closer on those ones. Not so close that you're going to get run over or anything, but you want to be closer. One of the things that looks really sloppy as an officiating crew is you take the ball goes dead 2 yards inside the hash marks on your side of the field, and you take the spot way out at the sidelines. So then the umpire picks up the ball inside and then has to toss it out to you to put it down. And then the referee has to come over and look to see whether or not it's a first down or not. It's a time consumer. It lengthens the game that is unnecessary, and also makes it look a little bit sloppy that we didn't come in and take the spot closer to where the ball went dead. Okay, and then on secondary spots, you want to take a spot, but you would sort of want to face the official that's got the primary spot, and just keep your 2 feet together and make eye contact with the primary spot official to ensure that you're in agreement. And sometimes it may be a case where the primary official maybe got blocked out and couldn't see where the ball went dead, and so you'll make eye contact and you'll get a deer in the headlight look from your primary official, and so then you'll have to take your secondary spot and turn it into a primary spot. ball retrieval is, as I said earlier, is really important because we want to try to keep the flow of the game moving, and you're going to use triangular method. Okay, from the sideline, you're probably going to go sort of to your back umpire or field judge. If you're working a 5 official crew, maybe to your umpire, and then they can toss it back into the middle of the field to for it to be spotted in at the hash marks or where the point of last scrimmage was. And throw the ball underhand. If you start throwing it overhand, you may be not as accurate, and so you want to be careful that you get it in. You don't want the ball bouncing around and other officials chasing it all over the place. Again, it makes it look like we don't know what we're doing. We look sloppy. You have to be careful as a sideline official when you are tossing the ball in. I know when you're even as a ball boy for the Rider games here in Regina, I went to toss the ball in, and it was just after a change of possession, and the Riders were sending their offense onto the field, and I didn't see him, but Ray Elgard stepped right in front of me, and I pinged the ball off the top of his helmet, which he was kind of, what the heck happened? But anyways, those things do occur, but try to avoid it. And that's why instead of going with a straight line throw, if you use the triangular method, you'll probably avoid those players coming on and off the field.
One thing on the ball retrieval, make use of your beanbag. I'll give you an example. You have a long run that goes down your sideline 30, 40 yards. Play goes out of bounds. You've whistled the play dead. You've killed the clock, and the player just drops the ball. Use your beanbag. You know, if you're going to go retrieve the ball, if it's a couple of yards away, or wait for you can wait for the umpire to come and take your spot before getting the ball, or you can put a beanbag on the ground, get the ball, and then underhand it in. Again, it just speeds the game up and helps keep the game flow going.
Okay, the last thing we'll talk about today is the use of the whistle. You use the whistle to stop play and only to stop play. Okay, and if you're the one that's the ball's going dead in your zone, make sure that you see the ball. Okay, the last thing you want to do, and I think we mentioned it last week as well, is to blow the play dead. And as you just start to blow the play dead, you see the ball rolling free from the pile. That's a real sinking feeling when you see that happen. That now you just killed the play and the ball was a fumbled ball. So make sure that you see the ball when you blow the play dead. You want to make sure that you whistle with some authority. Okay. The use of the Fox 40 whistles that virtually most everybody uses now is not too big of an issue because they're a pretty high pitch, shrill whistle. So as long as you blow it with some enthusiasm, you'll get a good whistle out of it. But don't be a weak whistle. Don't just go tweet. Make sure it's a tweet. You know, you got to be a real forceful thing. And you just want to make sure you don't have inadvertent whistles. Okay, that would be a situation where the ball's loose and and you blow the play dead. It's that sinking feeling is just awful. So and it makes things very difficult. I know I worked with an umpire one time, and I was the referee, and he was umpire, and he got sucked into the fake of the dive play into the middle of the line. He thought the ball carrier had the ball, and he's blowing the play dead just as the quarterbacks released the ball in air for a deep pass downfield. So needless to say, we had to kill the play, bring it back, and replay the down. So it's not, inadvertent whistles are not a good thing. So make sure you see the ball and you know what's going on. And that's the end of this week's session. Anybody have any questions or things you want to bring up or talk about? Okay, well, if there's no other questions, great. Thank you very much, everybody, for attending this week. And we'll see everybody next Saturday.